You're watching TechShark, bite-sized news for conservatives surfing the net. Unlike other shows, we're not just complaining about big tech tyranny or media bias. We're talking about how the conservative movement is starting its own solutions and creating its own content. Today, I'm joined by Babylon Bee managing editor Joel Berry. Thanks for joining us on TechShark. Tell me a bit about yourself.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Alex. I'm a little old joke writer out of the Midwest. So I started with the Babylon Bee about a year or so ago. Like many people, just started as a fan, enjoyed their content, started writing for them part-time, and apparently what I wrote was good enough for the Babylon Bee. So they hired me not too long ago, and I'm having a blast.
Awesome. Okay, so right to the point. We live in this crazy era. We got drag queen story time. We have a president who can barely string a sentence together.
That is going to beat this virus.
And Dr. Seuss is more controversial than Cardi B's display at the Grammys. With it like writing satire in 2021's world gone mad?
It's getting harder and harder. With the world going crazier, it gets harder and harder to satirize because satire is essentially exaggerating reality, and at some point, how much further can you take things? So, we've had articles that actually come so close to the truth because there's really not much further to take it. A good example, even yesterday. When the news came out that Kamala Harris was meeting with Bill Clinton for a discussion on women's empowerment, and we looked at that and we thought, that is a Babylon Bee headline. That's something that we could come up with. We almost thought about actually publishing that as a headline, the true story as a headline, just to see what would happen. We ended up changing it. Our headline ended up being Kamala Harris meets with Harvey Weinstein to discuss women's empowerment. So I guess I got the point across. But man, in a crazy world, it gets harder and harder.
Absolutely. I mean, what more or less inspired me to reach out to the Bee is how I've written how big tech companies and fact-checkers target your outlet, your satire outlet, for misinformation or disinformation, whatever. So what's the funniest incidence of big tech censorship or fact-checkers targeting the Babylon Bee?
Well, probably one of the funniest is the original. That's the one that kind of went viral. When the very first article that Snopes fact-checked was the CNN washing machine article. So the headline was CNN purchases industrial-sized washing machine to spin the news. And it was fact-checked. Facebook ended up warning us, we'll take your channel down if you don't take this article down. And that started the whole Snopes debacle. But as time went on, it started to get a little more insidious with how they were doing it. We beat back Snopes and Facebook that one time, but they have not stopped in their continual attempts to take us down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really do admire your outlet because I think great satire essentially does indeed hold up a mirror to society, and America is really just jamming. It's just jamming down that slippery slope. It took 4 years to go from canceling Confederate generals to now they're canceling J.K. Rowling and wrote Harry Potter. So what is another incident it's kind of like with The Simpsons where they would accidentally predict the future. What's another time where the Babylon Bee accidentally predicted the future with one of its satire articles?
Oh boy. I could list a few. It would take me a while to pull up. Do you want me to look one up? I have a few lists here. We keep a running in our writers group. We keep kind of a running tally of all these instances.
You have a tally of it? Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. We've had we call them prophecies. We take on this air of this mystic prophet, and it happens 2 or 3 times a week probably. We've had prophecies as old as 4 years old come true, up to minutes. I think the quickest prophecy that ever came true for us was when I believe it was the Abraham Accords, the peace deal, the Middle East peace deal with Israel and some Arab countries. One of our headlines was that CNN criticized the Israeli leaders for not social distancing when they shook the hands of the Arab leaders. And not more than like an hour after that, that's exactly what happened. CNN and a few other news outlets, that's the first thing they did, ignoring the groundbreaking event that was, with Middle East peace, going straight to the criticism of lacking of social distancing. Mm-hmm. I think what makes it so easy is they've become so predictable. And that's part of what I appreciate about what you guys do at Media Research Center. You kind of really expose these guys for just how robotic and how predictable it is. And I love the montages you do where you have like 50 media figures saying the exact same thing. And after a while, you get to the point where you know exactly how they're going to react. You know what they're going to say. And it's almost cheating at that point.
It really is interesting how really a lot of this involves sort of reading the writing on the wall, seeing the signs of the times. So recently, when Tucker Carlson more or less locked horns with the increasingly liberal military, you released a satire piece that really struck a chord with me. It was, quote, powerful, military to allow troops to replace camo with colors of their gender identity flag, end quote. And I think it's very interesting how you see a lot of militaries and corporations doing this whole strategy where they go woke so they can avoid liberal critique for scandals. And I call this process woke washing. I don't know if anybody else invented that first, but that's how I describe it. That seems to be the MO. Do you think criticizing this whole idea of woke washing, of these major institutions going liberal so that the liberal media doesn't bother them, do you think that's going to be a major beat going forward for the B in the Biden era?
Yeah, I think it really is it's low hanging fruit for jokes. I think, part of the comedy in all of this is, anyone who's worked for a corporation knows that these people don't care. They're trying to make a buck. They're trying to serve the stockholder. You might have a social media manager right out of college who has been indoctrinated into that whole worldview, the whole woke worldview, and they're running the public face of the company. And I think that's. We joke, we riff on it so much that sometimes we get criticized for it. We have the one conservative joke or the two conservative jokes. But as long as these people keep doing it, we're going to keep laughing at it. So right. I think it will continue to be a beat going forward.
Yeah. I mean, really, there is a kind of special responsibility that humorists have to call out a lot of the nonsense going on in their times. And I think the core of humor really is kind of observing differences. Something doesn't fit, or even just observing, here's what men do versus here's what women do, this group and that group and so on. But for liberals now, observing differences, especially between groups, is basically taboo. That's one of the biggest taboos. Do you think that this liberal retreat from so much of humor represents like an opportunity for conservative content creators going forward?
Yes. Something weird has happened in the last several years where, the left and the right have become so insulated from each other. You essentially have these two different realities, these two different truths. And comedy needs truth to work. I mean, that's essentially what you're doing. You're sneaking the truth out there in a way that catches people off guard and gets them to acknowledge something that they might not otherwise acknowledge. And when you have two different groups of people in this country that are really completely operating out of two wholly different truths, they're looking at completely different media. There's not that shared sense of what is true and what is not. You're seeing this thing where you have left-wing comedians now who are pretty much just delivering left-wing talking points for applause, and what on the right, we don't know yet. I think there's more to be built still with that, and I think there's wide open opportunity, not just to reach the right and serve that whole group of people, half the country, but to speak to the whole country, because I think deep down, no matter who you are, whether you're on the left or the right, we all have a conscience. We all, whether we acknowledge it or not, I think we recognize truth when we see it. We recognize common sense when we see it. And sometimes, when a goofy joke from the Babylon Bee serves the purpose of, being that kid in the corner saying the emperor has no clothes, it causes people to stand up and notice. So, yeah, I mean, there's huge opportunity for growth in that area. Huge opportunity for conservatives to build and serve that part of the country, and we just need more people doing it.
Yeah, finding ways to get truth past the goalie in this divided era is so critical. I mean, personally, I've seen that the Babylon Bee has started releasing animations lately, which is just brilliant. This is what we need. These are polished. These are witty. It's like, I think Ben Shapiro is correct when he says,
facts don't care about your feelings.
But the vice versa. Feelings don't care about your facts. That's also just a political reality. And we need to use entertainment to spread ideas rather than just policy lectures. Here's this chart, here's this treatise. So tell me more about how the Bee is expanding its approach, just as far as like what else do you have as far as projects or side projects or ways that you plan on expanding?
Yeah. Well, some of that stuff we kind of are keeping close to the chest, but, you know, you've seen what we're doing in animation. We have a pretty large creative team out in LA that is experimenting with all kinds of different formats and forms of media. So you've seen the animation. I think over the next year, you'll see some more come out, which is pretty exciting. You know, we'd love to see TV shows come out. We'd love to see movies come out. You know, it's great what the Daily Wire's doing. They're paving the way with you know, helping to produce film, and I think that's exactly where other outlets need to go as well. You know, when's the last time you saw a truly politically incorrect comedy that did not give a crap what society thinks, what the culture thinks, what you're supposed to say and what you're not supposed to say? You know, you wouldn't even need to be an overtly conservative film. You could just be a truthful, politically correct or incorrect film, and it would be huge, I would think. So yeah, I guess stay tuned on that. More to.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I mean, there's so many great, iconic comedies like Blazing Saddles or whatever that just couldn't be made in these days. But I gotta say, I love what y'all are doing. You know, in a time when so many great American institutions are kind of letting us down and going sour with political correctness, it's great to know we still got the Babylon Bee. You're expanding, you're doing more. I love to see it. All right, hey, we're out of time, but it's been great having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you. You've been watching TechShark. Once again, I'm Alexander Hall with MRCTV and Free Speech America. Have a good week.